A non-governmental organization which is into generation, dissemination and use of research and data, the Research and Grant Institute of Ghana says computational errors by the Electoral Commission taints the credibility of the announced 2020 presidential results. A statement signed by the group calls on the Electoral Commission to provide explanation on what was responsible for the miscalculation of the presidential results by the chairperson, Jean Mensah. Joining me in studio now is Executive Director of the Research and Grant Institute of Ghana, Dr. Samuel Ajololo. Dr. Ajololo, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So, first of all, the EC has explained that there was no miscalculation. The point they make is, if you take the announcement that was made on the day of the declaration, it was the total vote cast that was, if you like, mispronounced or misannounced, but it didn't affect the results that each candidate gets. I mean, what do you see from where you sit?
Right. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to your listeners. So if the EC is saying there is no miscalculation, that is a total lie. On the 9th of December, the EC announced the total valid vote cast to be 13,434,754. On that basis, there was a distribution for the votes that each presidential candidate actually got. And that went with the corresponding percentages. It is on that basis that Akufo-Addo got 51.9 something %. And so he was declared as the president-elect. Now,
this was on the 9th.
This was on the 9th. So clearly, the EC admitted that there was an error. And then in the press release by the EC on the 10th of December, it was announced that the EC inadvertently used the total vote cast as the total valid vote cast on the 9th. Now, granted that is true, and granted that the mistake was relating to the total vote cast as against the total valid vote cast, they were expecting that if we add the votes as announced by the EC that each candidate got on the 9th, we expect that that vote should tally with what the EC produced on the 10th.
Okay. Unfortunately,
that was not so. In fact, when we added the vote that the candidate got as announced by the EC on the 9th, we got 13,121,101. However, the revised figure released by the EC indicate that the total valid vote cast, which was distributed among the candidates, was 13,000. In fact, was not up to the figure that we got. For the EC to arrive at the new figure, there were some structural changes to the votes or to the vote that each candidate got as was announced on the 9th. In that particular case, you will see that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo had an increase of 174 votes. Okay. John Dramani Mahama had a decrease of 1,707 votes. Nana Akufo-Addo had a decrease of 63. But each candidate had a decrease. So the fundamental question that we seek to ask is, if indeed the miscalculation or the error was limited to the total vote cast as against the total valid votes, then what is the basis for the recalculation for the addition and the subtraction of the votes of the candidate as announced by the EC? So on this basis, we think that the whole process needs more explanation. It is not enough to come and release the summary results. It is important that we understand what resulted in that error in the first place.
The changes
and the processes you took. Errors are bound to happen, we admit. If you're a data scientist, you can admit that there are petty mistakes that sometimes happen that you may not know.
Of course, it depends on the margin of error.
Exactly. But the important thing is the steps you take to address the error.
So right now, what exactly do you demand, or are you demanding from the Electoral Commission? And have you reached out to them yourself?
Yes, so we are demanding several things. First is to understand what accounted for the error. And that is important because the EC has structures that it works with. And these structures, I think, are robust enough to be able to absolve the EC from such a computational error. In fact, results are collated at the are added at the police station, collated at the constituency level.
Yeah. Then this time at the regional level.
Sent to the regional level, before to the national level. So each of these steps are enough, should have enough computational machinery to be able to detect these errors. And so by the time the data get to the EC, it's a function of creating the cell for Akufo-Addo, creating the cell for Mahama, and then populating the cells as the figures come.
Yeah.
So for us to be seeing such an error at the national level is actually a worrying situation. So we hope to understand why.
Okay.
And then two, how was the mistake detected? Was it an internal check or it was an external prompt? Were they prompted by some external people that no, the figures released were not correct, or they themselves going through their things spotted it? And most importantly, what step was taken to correct these anomalies? And also, what resulted in the structural changes in the votes that the candidate got, such that some have increments and others have a decrease?
Have you reached out to the EC? That was a question that I asked earlier, because I mean these are legitimate concerns, but the only people who can answer is the EC. Or do you have plans to reach out to them directly to get these answers?
Oh yes, we have plans to reach out to the EC directly. In fact, we even think that we don't have to reach out to them because they know that there is so much stake in this election. And the least thing they could do is to create a sense of doubt about the result. And so I was expecting that following the release of the summary result on the 10th, it's either a press statement or some stakeholder meetings or some town hall meeting where they will take stakeholders through the process, what happened, and the steps that were taken.
By way of explanation.
It will carve a lot of nerves and tensions that you have in the system.
Okay, I see. Let me take your very final words. I mean, the EC hasn't obviously done what you said. It has, provided the correction, so to speak, on their website. And anytime that we have engaged the EC on any of our shows, they have, on their part, explained. You've made your intentions clear that you intend to reach out to them. Apart from that, what time frame are you looking to work within otherwise, so that it doesn't turn out to be concerns put out there and just left as such?
So we're reaching out to the EC by close of this week. By
close of this week, okay. We'll be here to get the response as well and to share it with the rest of the world.
Sure.
Thank you very much for coming through. Dr. Samuel Ajolulu there. He's head of the Research and Grant Institute of Ghana. They've been doing some computation and they're asking for explanation of the changes in the figures as announced by the Electoral Commission. They've indicated their plans to reach out to the EC and we'll get those answers.